I get to bring up a pal and somebody I get to hang out with for a little bit, which I'm excited about. Let's bring him over. Paul Peterson, CEO of Nextleaf Solutions, and probably one of the most fun tickers that we've got. It's OILS on the CSE and OILFF on the OTC. What's up, man?
Thanks for having me today, Patrick. Appreciate
come on. It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. You look great. I actually took my jacket off because I was getting so excited. I was getting hot. So you look awesome. I'll be the schlub here during this conversation. But why don't we start here? Before we get into a lot of what we're going to be discussing, which is actually about patents in the cannabis space and the importance and strategy of those patents. Why don't you give us a couple of quick minutes, Paul, on what you're doing at Nextleaf, what you've built, and give our audience a sense of the company itself.
No, that sounds great. So Nextleaf is a Vancouver-based extraction company. We're building the largest collection of U.S. patents for the extraction, purification, and delivery of cannabinoids. Proud to say after Canopy Growth and GW Pharma, Nextleaf's up there with companies like Pfizer and Merck for largest collection of issued U.S. patents around extraction, purification of cannabinoids. But I think for us, we've taken a big commitment to the development and protection of IP. And in Canada, we're building out a processing-only facility. We said from day one we'd never focus on cultivation, and think with the regulations and more importantly, with Canada being the first developed country in the world to legalize cannabis, we think there's a tremendous opportunity to use our patented technology in a way that allows us to create a significant competitive advantage when it comes to the cost per THC and CBD based molecule and the production of those molecules. So we've built an incredible business built around supplying some of the largest cannabis producers in the world with those high purity standardized molecules, and we continue to innovate. Just recently got issued a U.S. patent around the acetylation or the production of synthetic THC and CBD based molecules. Very excited, and wow. For us, it's a great opportunity to chat with you today, Patrick, and more importantly, I think talk about intellectual property in the cannabis industry. Right? Everyone's so focused on assets and so focused on the states that are legalizing, but we actually believe the opposite. We actually believe stay asset light, IP heavy, and really focus on leading the way on protecting what we think is going to be very valuable intellectual property within an industry where you see a lot of participation now from large tobacco companies, large pharmaceutical players, and we really think IP is how you build $1 billion business.
Okay, Paul, and we, I should have done this from the beginning, but let's take a step back actually for a second and define for the folks that are watching that may not have any idea what IP is, what intellectual property is. What is that? Why is it important? And as you build a business, how is that the moat around what you've built?
For sure, and IP. If you step back and you look at other industries, right? Biotech, pharmaceuticals. IP is everything, right? Tobacco. I mean, right now, there's a big patent war involved in vaporization on the tobacco side, right? So that's coming to cannabis. In December, we as an industry saw our first patent infringement lawsuit, and that was Canopy Growth suing GW Pharma for allegedly infringing on their CO2 extraction process. I think it was great. We were very excited about it. It was like Christmas morning for us. It's, the first time that a big company said, well, "Hey, wait a second here. We think that there's value in these patents." We've never seen it, right? And the reason that we've never seen patent infringement is because federal illegality in the United States. That's the simple reason. And Canopy looked at it, and I get calls probably once a week from some of the biggest patent lawyers in the world. First saying, what the hell are you guys doing to get all these issued patents? And we have almost 100% pending to issued patent success rates, unheard of. The industry average in life sciences is like 50%, right? So, lawyers are like, well, what the hell are these Nextleaf guys doing? Number two, how do we start defending some of this stuff? And for us, We're in this to build a great business, and we think that that there's a lot of value in protecting IP, developing, protecting IP. You look no further than what are the biggest pharmaceutical companies doing in cannabis. They're not building a bunch of greenhouse assets. They're not talking about brands. They are quietly developing the largest collection of cannabis patents, and Nextleaf's in that group as well. We have done a technology transfer. We have brought in founders in our company, inventors that have been working with cannabinoids for decades. And we've done a technology transfer to the legal market. We've built a team of engineers and scientists around it. And we've really said, how do we push the science forward? And how do we really build a lot of value when it comes to innovating and creating disruptive, unique formats of finished product through the delivery of cannabinoids? But more importantly, how do we produce these standardized CBD and THC molecules within a regulated, federally legal environment? How do we produce them very cost effectively? And that's the biggest thing. And I think that's what people don't focus enough on in this industry. That's where we think the big opportunity is, the production of standardized molecules very, very efficiently. When you have a cost advantage, we think you're able to scale that business. And really that's the focus for us around IP is protecting our innovation. We've innovated billion-dollar companies. We're a small company, 24 people up in Vancouver. And I think for us, proof is in the pudding. We haven't just talked about innovation. We've gone out there. We've out-innovated billion-dollar players. We have created a portfolio that really builds a moat around our competitive advantage, and we're really excited about it.
Well, that's really cool that you said that, right? 24 people in Vancouver changing the course of billion-dollar companies. I find very, very interesting, and I'll let you use that as a segue into this. But 80 patents issued globally for you guys, right? Somewhere around 14 or 15 in the US, which is insane. So 24 people in your team that have made that happen, right? And have charted the course of some of these relationships that you've made. We'll come back to that in a second. What I'd love to know more about is sort of recent history, right? And you touched on this a second ago with Canopy and GW, but what about the last 6 months in this industry? And how potentially that time frame has changed the way people in the cannabis industry look at IP and patents, and how important or strategic they may be.
Yeah, and I think everyone's so focused on the US and what's happening, but when you step back and you look at what's happening globally, right? The biggest companies in the world, right? British American Tobacco, Imperial Tobacco, Altria, Constellation Brands, right? These are all companies that are investing in Canada, not in the United States. And why is that? Let's look at the size of the Canadian market. I mean, it's because we're federally legal, because we have a framework that these large companies that don't want to touch the US until it's federally legal are coming in here, and every single one of those deals where they've invested in Canadian production, Canadian operators, is really all around R&D. It's around intellectual property. It's around getting a foothold in cannabis globally, where it's federally legal, and developing IP while the U.S. sits and argues, should we legalize this plant or not? And for us, we think this is a once in a generational opportunity. We think as a Canadian operator, we actually have a tremendous advantage over every U.S. MSO and producer when it comes to IP protection. And again, GW Pharma, 57 US patents, right? They were just acquired for $7.2 billion by Jazz Pharmaceuticals, largely over this patent portfolio. And again, one of those issued patents is around a CO2 extraction process to make Epidiolex, their FDA approved drug. Canopy has accused them of patent infringement. And why I bring that up, I think it's very important to everybody in this industry. Every operator, every investor, to understand what's happening, right? What's happened in the last 6 months, been big focus on IP. Forget about what Paul Peterson and Nextleaf's been saying in the last 2 years. You look at you read the tea leaves, you look at the pharmaceutical players, the tobacco players, and you realize, based on what we see in tobacco, what you see in pharma, and how important IP and patents are, it's gonna be exactly the same thing here in cannabis. And we think, whether you like it or not, that's just the reality of an industry that grows up, right? Process and unique formulation and delivery technology becomes very, very important. This is more than just an agricultural crop, right? The biotech side and the possibilities that can get unlocked by this unbelievable plant, I think are very exciting. We haven't had to have 100 PhDs in Israel like some of these big players have had. We got a team. It's like 24 in Vancouver, right? It's like Battle of the Alamo to some degree. And the biggest cannabis company in the world came into my hometown here, about 20 minutes away from our licensed processing facility, and operated what was the largest cannabis greenhouse in the world. And in the last year, that sucker's been burned to the ground. They've left the province and they've headed back to Ontario. And I think it's also what we've seen in Canada. We've seen a complete oversupply in this industry. We've seen some of the largest players in the world shutting down and burning down the greenhouses down to the ground because there's too much low grade biomass that's out there. And really that has been what our focus is. How do we solve that problem here in Canada? It's going to be the same problem in the United States, right? The last guest just talked about how 60% of the biomass grown in California leaves the state lines illicitly. I mean, that stuff's going to continue, right? There's just an oversupply of flower, and you get in any kind of industry where you're growing weed, right? So we have the same thing in Canada, and really a lot of this IP is taking this worthless or low grade, low quality flower that is filling up vaults that can't be sold as dried flower, can't be sold as pre-roll. And it's for us, we've worked the last 4 years in developing IP to take this low grade waste material and turn it into to a high purity oil that's ready to infuse edibles, vape pens, and these other kind of cannabis infused 2.0 products. We think our IP is very meaningful because at the end of the day, mass market is not smoking joints, right? Mass market is when consumers that use opiates and alcohol and other pharmaceutical recreational substances substitute for cannabis. They switch over to using cannabinoid-based products, and those are made
edibles, beverages, all these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And all our patents are all based around getting that standardized cannabinoid format that is then used to produce or manufacture beverages, edibles, and these derivative products. So we really believe in that. We really believe in the opportunity here in Canada and other markets as they legalize is, again, taking a waste product, not growing it, not having capital tied up in cultivation assets, but actually taking all this abundant supply of biomass and turning it into a molecule, a very high purity molecule. And for us, we're very excited. I mean, we think, again, big opportunity here to really validate our technology, validate our platform in Canada, but then scale this to the world as other countries follow Canada's lead. Yeah,
well, and they need to. So Paul, I mean, let's get down to the nitty gritty for a second here, right? And I think there's two parts to this question. When it comes to IP around a plant that has been on this earth for thousands of years, right? How do you do that, right? And then B, I was actually talking to somebody the other day, an executive in the psychedelics industry, who was saying, and I think it's applicable in this case, who was saying, some companies are going to be entrenched in IP around the novel molecule, right? Others around the synthetic or new molecule that comes along, right? And I obviously you guys are in both spaces. If you're talking about, I forget the terminology, CBDO acetate or THCO acetate or whatever the case may be. I'll let you describe it better than I will. But how do you protect the IP around a plant that's been here for so long, right? And how do you move forward then when it comes to those molecules that may be novel or synthetic, let's say?
Yeah, and I think for us, we're always looking at what is going to be commercially relevant. That's the first and foremost. And the biggest thing that we hear about cannabis from bankers is like, wow, we love the psychedelic stuff because you could actually patent a molecule. I said, boys, you can patent a molecule in cannabinoids. We've done it. We've got 3 issued U.S. patents around the production of specialty molecules, which are a derivatized version or a synthetic version of THC and CBD. These are converted. It's a patented process that Nextleaf's received U.S. patents around taking cannabis distillate, CBD THC distillate, and through a chemical process, creating what is a perfectly standardized format, which is slightly different than THC. It's called THCO acetate. More psychedelic effects. Slightly different than THC, but where I think is very exciting, and why I think we've had so much interest from pharma is that it's a molecule that is created in a lab that's based on a naturally produced and extracted cannabinoid, and I think there's lots of opportunities. We had somebody on our team who just recently came back from cancer, and used THCO acetate to get through chemotherapy, and then again, you go through these experiences and you say, wow, this is incredible what we're doing, and for us. We're here to take advantage of this once in a lifetime opportunity. When we think about what good can come out of this plant, we think there's unbelievable innovation and technology that can be unlocked through what we're doing. We got a team of very, very passionate cannabis entrepreneurs, PhD chemical engineers, and scientists. And I think we're doing stuff both on the synthetic route, but also in looking at, okay, how do we take this biomass that's growing outdoors abundantly, and how do we pull out the chemistry, pull out the molecules, and purify, get rid of the fats and waxes and all the impurities that cause issues with taste and smell when you add these molecules to a product, to a consumer product. And so we think there's a great deal of infrastructure and IP value. And when we look, British American Tobacco just invested $250 million in the largest cannabis processor in Atlantic Canada, that is largely a cultivator and is just launching a R&D and center of excellence around CBD molecules. I mean, we're very excited. We've got 4-year head start on these guys. And, for us, we really think that, for any entrepreneur in this space, it comes down to execution, right? And I think we've built a culture where we've built a culture around innovation. So we've been able to actually get people to join our team, leaving the largest cannabis producers in the world, and come and join us. And so we think that it's our technology, but it's our people. But most importantly, it's our culture that allows us to stay on the bleeding edge of innovation. And you mentioned psychedelics. I mean, it's something that the psychedelic industry, because there's no commercial platform, everyone is focused on patents, and we love that because it's very much validated our strategy over the last 4 years. Right, there's very few companies in cannabis that have focused on IP, and we think it's a big opportunity for us because it's like a land grab right now, because of cannabis being illegal federally. There's been so little R&D that's been done. There's been so little intellectual property that's been filed in the United States. We use the U.S. as our primary jurisdiction, and then through the patent prosecution highway, we file all over the world in jurisdictions where we think cannabis will be legalized or relevant in the next 20 years. And for us, very excited. We've got patents issued in Europe, the UK. We've got patents issued in South America.
And you guys are all over the place.
Awesome. And again, like, strategy is different. We're not looking to put greenhouses in all these jurisdictions. That was Canopy and Aurora's strategy, right? Is to put physical cultivation assets in all these countries. We say, listen, we want to be the most efficient producer in our 6,000 square foot Vancouver-based processing facility, and we want to have the largest IP portfolio anywhere in the world, and be able to respond as these countries legalize. It's about speed to market, right?
Right.
And working with partners in other jurisdictions. But for us, it's really innovation. It's really tremendous value in unlocking that innovation through the work that we're doing, but it's commercializing our IP in Canada where it's federally legal, where we got a framework, and excited to eventually get into the United States. But there's a lot of time for that. I mean, with 280E, with everything that's happening, we're taking our time. We're continuing to file IP and patents in the U.S. very aggressively, and obviously watching what you guys are all doing there with coming up with a regulatory and legalization framework.
We'll get there. We'll get there eventually. But Paul, listen, we're about at time here. With just the last minute that we have here, I'd love for you to just boil it down, right? What's the opportunity for investors in a company like yours right now, with all the IP that you guys have and the direction that you're moving? Why is it valuable? Why should they be looking at it? Anything else that you want to clarify there?
GW Pharma was just acquired by Jazz Pharmaceuticals a couple months ago, $7.2 billion. Their primary asset was GW's 57 U.S. patents around the extraction and delivery of cannabinoids. We're proud to say Nextleaf's got 14 issued U.S. patents. We think that we've got $1 billion in IP value that as a company we're working on unlocking through both IP licensing, our wholesale business in Canada, and now our recently launched consumer branded business that for us is production of products that are manufactured with high purity distillates, which is what our patents cover. And for us, we're really excited as a business to continue to develop and commercialize our collection, which is one of the largest in the world, of issued patents around the extraction, distillation, and delivery of cannabinoids. So really appreciate the time, Elliot. Nextleaf Solutions is our company. We're listed as Oils on the Canadian Stock Exchange, Oil FF in the US, and love to chat with any investors. Afterwards, we got a team that's focused on building a great business, creating real value, and just really appreciate the opportunity always to chat with you and your team at Benzinga.
Oh man, it's our pleasure. It is. Nextleafsolutions.com, you guys. Paul, it's a pleasure. Again, I'm gonna forgive you and excuse you for calling me Elliot. I don't know who that guy is. He's a bum. He might be on a different track somewhere, but don't worry about him.
Sorry, Patrick.
No worries. So OILS and then OILFF, I believe. OILFF. So, dude, always happy to see you. Shout out to Jason McBride on your team. He kills it every day. And we'll see you guys later.
Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate it.